Hi and welcome to this section of the Fintech Week. This panel discussion is about all of the knowledge within our network, the best practices of systemic collaboration for Fintech, incumbents and law enforcement agencies. My name is David Söderberg, and I'm the head of compliance at Safello. I have 10 years of experience within the security industry. I have worked at Euroclear, the Swedish central security depository. I have worked on a multinational progressive law firm, and for the last 2.5 years, compliance within the field of crypto has been my passion. I have also presented in front of the National Fraud Center, the NBC of the Swedish Police Authority, and participated in a Q&A with the Ministry of Finance in regards to EU regulation of the crypto asset market. But today is not about me. We have a very exciting and competent panel for today's topics. I'll start by introducing Pia Bergman. Pia is an expert in fighting economic crimes at the Swedish Tax Authority. She has been working since the mid-80s combating serious economic and organized crime. She is also the initiator of Penningtvättsnätverket, or the Anti-Money Laundering Network, which includes 70 different companies, authorities, organizations, and banks, and has roughly 300 contact persons within that network. We also have Charlotte Lowry. Charlotte is currently the AML lead of the Danish Fintech Pleo, a business spending solution aiming to streamline corporate finance by eliminating the dated expense report. Pleo is also a member of the FFE, Fintech Fincrime Exchange. With a Master of Law and previous experience with PwC and HSBC, she has a passion for fostering good compliance cultures through collaboration. And we have Magnus Karlsson. Magnus is an operations developer and senior analyst at the Swedish FIU of the Swedish Police Authority. He has a long track record of analyzing AML, anti-terror, and law enforcement intelligence work. Projects include Black Wallet, a cooperation between the Swedish and the Finnish FIU to identify money laundering and terror financing risks within the fintech sector. He has also worked in migration-related issues such as radicalization and security threats that connects to terror financing. So it's a very interesting panel. And going to the topic, first of all, I would like to hear more from Charlotte about what's the FFE, what's the Fintech Exchange?
Sweet, thank you for having me. Yeah, we are members of the Fintech Fincrime Exchange, which is essentially a kind of collaborative group of fintechs. We meet in London mostly, maybe once a month. It's also active across Asia Pacific and the US, and is essentially a collection of MLROs and AML professionals across these kind of young and growing fintechs, coming together to share experiences, typologies, trends, ask questions to the community. We have lots of insight from the UK FIU. We have insight from other kind of large international organizations. And yeah, it's come together and collaborate and kind of share information on anything we see in this space that might be helpful to the community to come together and help everybody fight financial crime together. As much as a lot of these organizations like us, Pleo, Starling's a member, Revolut's a member, we might all be kind of competitors in one field, but in the field of financial crime, I think we're all trying to work together and come and help each other fight these crimes.
Yeah, that is great. And Pia, then you can talk about the anti-money laundering network that you initiated.
Yeah, as you said, I've been working against organized crime and heavy economic crime since the mid of 80s. And one of the first things I learned was that it's very important to collaborate with others, because even if you think you are the smartest one, you're not that smart that you can fight against the heavy economic crimes and money laundering networks if you don't take connection with others that can help you. So 2007, I had some connection with the 4 big banks in Sweden. And we have just a meeting and said, can we help each other? The money laundering laws was new, and we have to learn more about what was this, know your customer, what does it mean? What does it mean for the companies? What does it mean for the tax authorities? What information do we have? And we have some meetings 2007, and soon we said, okay, we are on a way, but maybe we are not the only one who's facing money laundering in our work. Maybe we can connect with some others too. And I know that the 4 banks was very they hesitate a lot to invite fintech banks, exchange when no money exchange and so on. But after a while we say, okay, they thought there were problems in those areas, but they said, well, let us know. If we know more about them, then we can see what's fine and what's problems, and then we can learn from each other. And that's also a way to know your customer. So in day by day, month by month, we increase the network. And as you said, David, now is more than 70 participants, but more than 300 that get the emails and so on. And we have 6 meetings every year. And then we try to increase our knowledge about everything, about how they act, frauds, and different things, just to learn from each other. And this big network also have suddenly given birth to smaller networks that have made connections during the big meetings, and they can connect between the meetings and said, we have heard that you have this problem, we have it too, what can we connect, can we do something? It's problem sharing information, but you can share phenomena, you can share some ideas what to do with it.
Yes, great. And Magnus, can you tell us a little bit more about the Black Wallet then?
So the Black Wallet is an EU-funded project aimed at mapping out risks connected to the fintech sector in terror financing and money laundering. And the name actually derives from most of us, we have now our wallets in our cell phones. So that's the name. The project has been running for 2 years now. Will be concluding. We had the final event just yesterday, actually. And we've been reaching out to companies, having surveys and such, dialogues, seeing what kind of information do these companies hold, how do they use them in their KYC processes, so on and so forth. And we've also have some products being put out there, have our Black Wallet best practice guide and some information for law enforcement and some information for the companies out there. They're available at the Swedish police homepage.
Great. So with the Fin Crime Exchange, Money Laundering Network, and Black Wallet, do we need more networks, or how can we share the insights that are within these different networks? I can give that to Magnus.
There's always a need for network and collaboration. Not long ago, we've started something called Samlit, where the Swedish police is collaborating with the largest banks in anti-money laundering initiative. And like Pia said, these networks, they tend to give rise to other networks. And the one vital thing when fighting, especially organized crime, is to combine different sources of information in order to sort of put the puzzle together. And that requires a lot of cooperation.
Yes, and for the audience as well, Charlotte, is there any similarities to the Danish FIU with collaboration and networking that you have experienced?
Yeah, I mean, Pleo, we're active across 6 different countries. So we experience quite a lot of FIUs. So we have the most experience of the Danish FIU, but also across Sweden, across the UK. On the whole, the Danish FIU for sure is more collaborative. We speak a lot more. We have a tighter relationship. We go through cases pretty in depth. Whereas in the UK, probably by the amount of SARS and the amount of investigations that get sent forward to them, they can't quite go through them all. But they definitely engage a lot with the FFE. I mean, we've had speakers from Black Wallet come through, but also they run trainings for law enforcement. We're not the runners of the FFE. We're just a member, and we're purely speaking its phrases. But they run international training for police, for FIUs to come together and learn about fintech, because I think whenever we file a SAR, these FIUs receive them and they think, what is this fintech? Are you a bank? Are you not a bank? What are you doing? And we find that if they're kind of more open to engaging in trainings, one with us by just speaking on the phone, which for sure the Danish FIU is, and 2, attending sessions from the FFE, or even kind of with projects with Black Wallet, reaching out and being present in these networks and with these different FIUs, then for sure they're starting to be more open to collaboration. But also there's a lot of good collaboration being pushed from the ground up to the FIUs, which we're seeing a lot more of.
Yes, and I can speak from own experience that I have encountered different fraud waves and up close, and the fintech companies do encounter criminal behavior first in the front line. So to both Pia and Magnus, how could this knowledge of ongoing and complex criminal behavior be transferred to the authorities in order to help you? Let's start with Pia.
Well, they go through Magnus, I think, by law. Then you have to report it, and then it goes on to the tax authority. So it's a must by law to report if you think something is going on. But I just want to go back to what you talked about earlier, because this collaboration between fintechs, ordinary banks, authorities, and so on, as we have in this money laundering network, even if I can be proud of was an initiation of this network, is also it had to be, I think it's important, it has to be something more like a function, not because in nowadays it's not a mission for the tax authority. It was when I was leading a project at the tax authority that I saw the need of it. But I think it has to be a mission for the tax authority or for the police company as the samordningsfunktionen, that it can be something that's regular and it's there not just for some years, it's going to be there forever and ever, because we are going to need to collaborate together and share information to fight against all these money laundering frauds and other things that are happen. And we have to share information. And when we learn what to report, as you, David and Safalo, you suddenly see something, then you know what to report to Magnus. So he can also learn what to report to the tax authority or to someone else. And by sharing knowledge, by learning from each other, we can be more efficient and share more information, and then it's going to go more smoothly, I think. Nowadays, it's mostly the big banks that are sharing information, and the small participants in the money laundering are almost say nothing, and we have to change that.
I think this is where kind of group.
What?
I think this is where groups like the FFE come in really useful, because we do see kind of huge effort by big banks in look at the Dutch transaction monitoring efforts, where the 5 largest banks are coming together and having totally joint transaction monitoring, where they can split up these concerns that are raised kind of in this like layering phase of money laundering, and they can share actual information of actual transactions with each other. But when we speak to FIUs or authorities, they kind of say, Fintechs, they're quite small, do they know what they're doing? How are they going to kind of share information with each other? And this is why groups like FFE is where these kind of smaller groups come together. And not only do we share kind of information on typologies, but you can form relationships with each other, and you can work with your cooperatives kind of in other fintechs to kind of cut down the stigma that fintechs maybe are a bit kind of lagging behind the big banks. For sure, we're smaller, but I think we're better at sharing the information and helping each other as much as we legally can when we see activity going on in each other's platforms.
Yeah, and Magnus, the same question to you there. How can this information, these often ongoing and complex criminal behavior, be transferred to you in a way that it's easy understandable, and the FIU knows that, oh, this needs to be prioritized? Yeah.
So we receive, suspicious activity reports and transaction reports, and when there is something that is, time pressing, the reporting entity usually calls us as well, flagging it. But when it comes to sort of use the information, so I analyze a lot of the incoming stuff, and one way which I sort of collaborate with actors such as fintech companies is that I would develop some sort of hypothesis, and I would approach an actor that I know is willing to collaborate to have them try this hypothesis out, to test it on their data, and to give me the result. And this is usually, anonymized data, so it's not specific persons. And that gives me the possibility to see if my hypotheses were correct, and if they were, I use these to model typologies of crimes, which we then communicate to everyone in the business. And this is a very, for me, a very efficient way to create typologies that are grounded empirically, and it would be impossible to do without the collaboration of the industry.
Yeah, and that brings me sort of to a question that I think the whole network would want to know. Is there any type of collaboration that you would like to do? It touches on the PS subject as well, but can't due to legal obstructions. Magnus?
The privacy laws, they are there for a reason, but it's no secret that they also hamper us. They do. So there are a lot of information that would be useful from such, like big data, which isn't necessarily suspicious activities as such, but would be very useful to analyze in its entirety. And these things are many times not possible today.
Charlotte, do you want to add anything to this question? Have you encountered the legal obstructions when when you have tried to report, or any collaboration where it's legal obstructions?
For sure. I mean, I think none when it's kind of actual legal obstructions of being told not to do something, because we're well aware of what we should and shouldn't try before someone like Pierre Magnus jumps on us. But I think for sure, sometimes we come across things in investigations or in reviews, and we think this would be so much easier if we could go and speak to this other organization and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. Are you seeing something different? Are you seeing something similar? Can we share some of this transactional information? I mean, there's lots of kind of efforts kind of spurting up now to try and get around this. I know reg tech companies like Salve are trying to create this AML bridge, which uses PET technologies to anonymize a lot of this data, to share a lot of it where possible. But for sure, there's probably never a day goes past where somebody leading an AML function doesn't think this would be a lot easier if we could openly speak to everybody else who these people hold accounts with and try and understand more, because a lot of it is blindsided.
I mean, there are actually money mules who goes from company to company, and they do the exact same thing, and the companies can't communicate this between themselves.
Yeah. There was a big kind of push to combat these money mules recently. I know FFE was involved in it. I'm sure people in Black Wallet were aware of it, for EMA6, which I think resulted in hundreds of arrests, where all these companies came together for a specific money mule takedown operation. And it kind of just showed how many arrests and how many investigations and how much you can get out of bringing people together for one initiative, versus maybe that should just be ingrained in the way we practice.
But I think we also know that many of these schemes are possible because of all of the false facades that are all around, and using false ID and so on. So I think also that we can collaborate together for some new laws, like biometric ID, even maybe biometric bank ID, and more things that are secure the IDs, so we know when we can study the documents, that we know that this is really the person behind, and this is really the person behind the company, really behind the accounts and so on, because nowadays we can't be sure.
Yeah, and I also thought of what can the fintech companies do better to help the authorities in their investigations, in their research of modus, in their way of mapping out different type of crimes or any of the such?
I think it's three things: report phenomena that you see, report actions to FIU directly, call them or report them by otherwise, and when authorities like tax authority want your help in transaction and so on, just send them. And when you work in your company, David, maybe also explain them.
Yeah, yeah, it could be quite complicated
Could be
sometimes.
useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Magnus, what do you say?
You know, the fintech companies, they're often small, and they might not have, you know, the size of AML departments that the banks have, but they actually have an upper side to this as well. They're data-driven companies, and they are usually new. They have structured data. They don't have it spread out across a dozen old systems that's been around for 20 years, that some, or even longer, much longer in some cases. And they also usually sit on data that is, you know, non-financial data that can be used in order to detect pattern and to identify misuses and criminal behavior. So put all of that data into work, and a lot of fintech companies are doing that and are doing it really good.
Yeah,
Charlotte,
that's really interesting. Yeah, we do sit on a lot of data, not just financial. We have a lot of pieces of information. I mean, the way that Pleo is set up, we have a lot of kind of documents, a lot of ID documents, a lot of kind of images of receipts and invoices that really just help, that banks don't have. Banks have to go out and request that. But also, I think fintechs, we're all pretty young and feisty, and we're really excited to help. I know whenever the FIU in Denmark phones me and says, hey, this is what I've got, what do you think? Like, we work on it together. They have my personal phone number. They can phone me at any time. We're very ready to just jump on this and to just do as much as we can. Whereas I think if you phone up a bank, you're going to be phoning 4 different people to try and get through to the right person. Everybody's very busy. Everybody's got very tight SLAs. So I would argue that fintechs already are probably doing a bit more of a kind of hands-on job, because the people running the show, or the people who are going to be speaking directly to you, will know very, very quickly what you're talking about, even if you might get confused about what kind of company we are.
So, and I also, I mean, I visit a lot of banks and other financial actors, and I have an example that I usually use. So if the banks, for example, would report a robbery, they would obviously include the information what office was being robbed. That's an essential piece of information. But when they report a transaction that was made online, it's not that obvious for them what pieces of information is of interest here. You know, we're talking like IP addresses, hardware being used, and so on. So all of this type of data, it brings it forward, and it can also be used to coordinate investigations. You know, and there are problems on both ends here. We don't receive that information, and the authorities, I think, are not yet well equipped to use that information. But when we do, we get good results.
Yeah. We're not
Pia,
always allowed to use that information. That's a problem.
That as well. I was wondering as well, and I think that a lot of people will be interested in, is there a good way of, or how would be the best way of sharing those insights today when it comes to the more advanced device data and stuff like that the police and the authorities can use? How would be the best way of sharing those insights today, or is there a better way than we're not doing today, Magnus?
When it comes to some of this data, where we're able to collect this in our reporting system, and it is continuously being developed. So we're adding more and more fields to include this type of information for us to receive in a structured way. So, yeah.
Yes. And I was also, and I think everyone else was wondering, is there anything you would like to add or to inform that have not already been asked? Is a question. I can start with Pia.
Well, I think all this work against money laundering is not passing and not fading away in any way. We have to stay there and stay together and collaborate, and also make it finding new ways in our way to collaborate, but sharing schemes, sharing phenomena, and if we can, of course, also sharing actors. That's not always possible, but sometimes it's possible to report them, and from the police agency, then the tax agency, or what agency that are needed of the information can get it. But I think we have to have this, what Charlotte said, also to keep each other inspired by the mission. This is important. It's important for all the industry. It's important for the society, and it's important for everyone that we can be guards that make the criminals not getting the money, that make them more stronger. The society have to be stronger, and all the industry can help us to do that, and we in the authorities are trying to do our work, and we are fighting to get more tools to talk to each other and so on, but I think together we can do it.
Yes. Charlotte, do you want to add something to?
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I think the keeping up the engagement. I mean, sometimes you go to conferences or you're speaking to people, and maybe a smaller fintech stands up and is pitching something, and people from the kind of larger incumbent banks say, "Oh, it's a fintech. Like, are their processes like quite good enough?" But just kind of standing there and saying that about another company, obviously, is going to do nobody any help. We're all working to kind of do the good of society. We're kind of in one strong mission. We're not really fighting against competitors. May they be business competitors, but we're kind of in it as a kind of collaborative team to fight against this crime. I think one of the overarching assumptions with fintechs, and this is a kind of fintech focused session, is that maybe there isn't enough knowledge sitting within these fintechs. They're young, they grow really fast, they climb up the mountain very, very quickly. But the FFE has recently worked with ACAMS, which is one of the largest association of money laundering specialists, to develop this new exam called the Kafka exam, which is a qualification created by fintechs for fintechs to really upskill anybody in AML. And I don't think that's constrained to anybody who works in fintech. I think that's for anybody who's interested and wants to learn a bit more before jumping into this collaborative space. But for sure, it's not a fight alone, and I think quite a lot of companies get a bit scared of maybe like the tax agency or the FIU, and they say, "Oh God, if they don't like my SAR, they're gonna rip me to shreds." But keeping dialogues like this open and showing that people can talk and people can work together is one of the main benefits of this.
Yeah, Magnus, do you want to add something to the?
Yeah, I can. So this is an ongoing struggle. It's sort of like an arms race with, measures and countermeasures. So this will never end as long as there are criminal profits, which there will always be. My recommendation would be to take these things serious. If you're an obligated entity under money laundering laws in Sweden, register with the FIU Sweden at our GoAML platform. Even if you don't have anything to report, register beforehand, because that will also give you access to our board there, where we disseminate information. So that's a one way to keep a track. And have a look at the Black Wallet products, like the reporting guide. They are tailored towards the fintech sector.
Great. And with those words, I think we're running out of time. So I would like to thank the panel for taking the time from their busy schedule to be here today. And the audience, I would like to say that you do not miss out on the fireside chat between Michael Gromek and the Chief Strategy Officer of GetSwish AB, Joseph Haas. We will be here for questions, and feel free to add us to your LinkedIn network. And we thank you for listening.